Canada's Foreign Minister, Marc Garneau, said this afternoon that Canada would not soon forget the lesson from all of this. So what is that lesson? Retired Vice-Admiral Paul Maddison is someone we're going to ask. He previously served as Commander of the Royal Canadian Navy and as Canadian High Commissioner to Australia. He is now Director of the Defence Research Institute at the Australian Defence Force Academy. Vice-Admiral Maddison is in Canberra, Australia. Mr. Maddison, very good to see you. Nice to see you back with a Canadian audience. I know you've been in Australia for quite some time now. When I look at the two Michaels, back home now, 1,000+ days in Chinese custody, what do you think the lesson that Canada should take from all of this is?
Well, firstly, it's wonderful that the two Michaels are home, reunited with their families and those they love. And that's a great win for Canada. And congratulations to those officials at Global Affairs Canada and elsewhere across government and civil society that put so much effort into getting them home. But the lesson here is clearly this is an inflection point for Canada and its relationship with China and the Chinese Communist Party. The Chinese Communist Party has clearly revealed itself, decloaked from Deng Xiaoping's hide your strength and bide your time philosophy to Xi Jinping's very aggressive, confrontational challenge on the United States and the Western world in terms of shaping and influencing a much more authoritarian and fear-based global governance. And clearly that relationship between Canada and China in terms of a desire to grow middle class and economic prosperity through increased trade with China, that all needs to be revisited. And so this is the opportunity, I think, for Canada to really hoist in that lesson, to revisit whatever is the China policy of the day in Ottawa. I'm not quite sure what that is. And to really look again at our relationships with our more important partners, our allies, the United States, Australia, the United Kingdom, Japan, India, France, other NATO partners, and really look at how Canada can best contribute to shaping a change of behavior amongst the senior leadership of the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, I think everybody would acknowledge that Canada can't simply go this alone, that we just simply don't have the punching power, don't have the bench strength to be able to do that. But then the question, of course, is you look at a country like Australia, we're speaking to you from Australia, it's much more in the neighborhood with China, and yet they are widely known as having a more aggressive stance and a clearly articulated plan in terms of their relationship and the way in which they participate with allies. We see this new pact with the UK and the United States that is really there to counter China. What do you think the lessons that Canada ought to learn from Australia? What are they?
Well, for one thing, there's a very open-eyed and clear, pragmatic, strategic assessment of the threats as they are evolving in the Indo-Pacific region. There is a bipartisan sort of whole of country approach to examining Australia's national security context and taking the steps necessary to contribute to protecting those security interests. You know, in Australia was attacked in World War II repeatedly by the Imperial Japanese. More ordnance was dropped on Northern Australia than on Pearl Harbor by several times. And history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And the expansionist, revisionist, and aggressive acts being taken by the Chinese Communist Party has really triggered a strategic sense of urgency here in Australia to do more, to accelerate alongside key allies like the U.S, U.K, Japan, and others. And I'm not sure that, I guess the lesson to answer your question for Canada is it's time to buy into this strategic sense of urgency in dealing with the rising threat of China.
Okay, so there's buying in terms of an ideological approach, but then there's the practicalities. Yeah. So we see Australia buying in with the U.S. and U.K. on this nuclear submarine deal that has a whole bunch of other components to it. What are the practical things that Canada, in your mind, needs to do now?
Well, for one thing, Canada could revisit its defense spending and force structure and force posture and realize that if you want to shape and influence the global narrative around how to ensure the security of democracies and the values that underpin them going forward in this century. You need to put some coin into the conversation. And so when you look at Australia again as an example, an economy that's 2/3 the size of Canada's, and yet the defense spend is well over 2.2% of GDP and growing. The budget here is around 45 billion Australian a year, significantly more than Canada's. And so the opportunity is now for Canada to step up, to look at the AUKUS agreement, ask ourselves why the UK, Australia, and the United States have gone this way, and then look for opportunities to join. Now, AUKUS is much more than the transfer of nuclear propulsion technology. It's really about accelerating the collaborative development of new competitive advantage military capabilities aimed at ensuring that the armed services of the Chinese Communist Party, the People's Liberation Army, does not develop overmatch in the decade or two to come here that would really put our freedoms at existential risk. So accelerating across the
I just want to pick up on that because that's a big thing that you're saying. Do you believe that's the pathway that we're on, that in the next decade or two, the way that China is advancing puts what we know at existential risk?
I do. If you look at the activities, the foreign interference activities underway in Canada at this moment, the United Front Workers Department being run out of the embassy and the consulates general. If you look at the gray zone operations that are being executed against, cyber attack against Canadian digital infrastructure, the undermining of democratic processes. We've seen it in the election here in Canada over the past, a couple of weeks ago. I'm reading about candidates who are convinced that they weren't successful because the Chinese language press in Vancouver successfully shaped voters' opinions. We're in a non-kinetic exchange now with the Chinese Communist Party, and that's why countries like Australia, the UK, and the US here have signaled that they've got this. They've hoisted in this strategic signal. The attempts to engage, to shape, to influence, to trust, to cooperate with Chinese officials have been met with stone walls. And so, this is a challenging time.
Paul Maddison, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. And have a great day, David.
Yeah, you too.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.